Mr. Tshabalala, thank you so much for your time this afternoon and for joining us here on the program. Now, let's perhaps begin here. Our discussion, as you know, comes at the back of the festive season, where many probably made some very unwise financial decisions. But also, not too long ago, the Reserve Bank increased the interest rate by 25 basis points in November. What's lying ahead in this mix of things, particularly for consumers who are struggling with the debt currently?
It doesn't look good. Thank you for welcoming me, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you and your listeners. It doesn't look good. You know what? Normally you see when the economics, they'll show you the graphs. The graphs, it goes up and down, it goes up and down. So there are times where the graph goes up, there are times where the graph goes down. In other words, the economy goes up, the economy comes down. So where we are now, the economy is down. And according to respectable economists, they suggest that things are going to be worse. That is understandable. Remember, we are from COVID-19. COVID-19, the economy was closed all over the world. It was not only in South Africa. And because of that, people were not working. Others, they were affected in terms of their salary were cut. They were not getting what they were supposed to get. Others, they were retrenched, okay? It's a question of how do people survive? And I'm told that it's going to be worse before it gets better. But now, this situation is not doom for all. For the rich, this is the nice part of the time. This is Christmas for them because they are going to get things for cheap. Because you can imagine, this is the time where people are going to lose their houses. This is the time people are going to lose their cars. And then because of that, so the banks or the economy, remember the economy, there must always be goods and sales at all times. So now if the economy is not moving, the economy reach what we call stagnation. And then once the economy reaches stagnation, it goes to a situation of recession. So that is why you say the Reserve Bank has increased the interest rate, because the Reserve Bank, their job is to monitor the situation. Now you want to know what are the reasons, what are the causes. You know what are the causes? People sometimes want to solve problems with easy solutions instead of difficult solutions. I'll give an example, practical example, so that you can understand better. People who's employed, there is a difference between an employed somebody and self-employed somebody. The difference is an employed somebody knows very well that every 20th of the month I'll get the money, or every 31st of the month I'll get the money, or every week or every fortnight, all right? But the self-employed, he must create that salary for himself and the employees. So if there is no money for the self-employed, he has to think deeper. Now, what does the employed person does? If he has a problem, like we come from December now, he will say, no, let me spend. I know I'll get it by month end. For instance, it's December, people are throwing parties. As they're throwing parties, and then he's aware out of the blue, and then the expenses just balloon, they have to spend. He says, no, let me just go and borrow, all right, which is the easy way. Let me go and borrow so that I can be able to service what I'm busy with. And then month end, I'll pay. Then the problem starts. Come month end, he can't service that. Now we are in January, the longest month of them all. The month that is very, very difficult, because this is the month where kids are going to school. This is the month where you need to balance your things. What do? The easiest way. They go again and borrow. That's when now people start going to the
Mr. Tshabalala,
yes.
I mean, you've raised a couple of things here. Perhaps let's, put them all into some form of baskets. Let's talk about the employed currently who are struggling. At the moment, we're seeing so many people during this time downgrading their lives somewhat. And as you've said, as schools open, parents have opted to remove their children from private schools and enrolling them at government schools. One would imagine that having the foresight of financial trouble ahead, as you've just mentioned, that 2022 is posing, and budgeting during this time now becomes even more essential. So talk to us about where does one begin at this time? You've downgraded your lifestyle. You do not want to lose that house and that car, as you've said, which will make the rich very happy. So what does one do? You are working and you've downgraded your lifestyle so that you can service that debt.
Nati, you cannot have it all at all times. You cannot bake your cake and eat it, all right? You must be able to sacrifice. You have said something very nice. People have downgraded. That's one part. You need to start that. But after downgrading, you need to bring another element. The other element is what? Make sure that you have more than one source of income. What kills people depend on one source of income. That makes it difficult. As I was giving the example of a self-employed and an employed person, a self-employed, if there is a problem with the cash flow, he will try something to bring an income. And that's a difficult one. Because when you try something new, it's still going to give you a problem. And you need to downgrade someone. Now, at where they are today, they need to look at themselves. And I always say to people, you need to have a budget meeting, people. That's very important. And that budget meeting should include the family so that the family can discuss and show everybody in the house that, guys, we need to get things going. And I still stress and say to you, one source of income is not going to solve the problem. You need to be multi-skilled. There are many ways of making an income. You cannot make an income only by working at SABC. There must be something else that you do that brings an income. And to do that something else, it's very difficult because that something else is difficult. You need to nurture it. To nurture it until it grows, it becomes a solid asset that can bring money. All right? So those are not easy answers to give. But unfortunately, there's the employed people. They become so spoiled because of this salary. They end up being slaves to salary. Do you understand? You must never be a slave to salary. Hence, people say, don't work for money, but let the money work for you. Because money can work 24 hours. You as Nati, you must knock off, you must go and sleep, but the money can work around the clock, you see. So those are some of the things that people should think of. Yes, you are down and out now, but it's not all done and dusted. You can look back and review and say, how do I get my things right? Firstly, let me sort out my problem. The rich, this is how they do. The problem with us, we want to spend all the money that we earn. If you get 100 rand, you want to spend the entire 100 rand. The rich, what they do, they spend at least maybe 20 rand out of the 100 rand. The 80 rand, they send it to create money. In other words, they make that 80 rand to create another asset so that it can be able to create another source of income. That's the solution that is at our disposal.
Now, you've mentioned something very important, and that's the model of revenue and expenditure, which has been preached for many, many years in the past. You've also mentioned something very critical, and that is multiple streams of income. So once you've sorted out your budget, once you've held that budgeting meeting that you so critically speak of, you've downgraded your life, and you're now starting to embark on how you can then get that revenue in, get the money to start working for you. Where do you begin when you start looking at what other sources of income I may need to help me with my financial problems?
Look, anyone can start a source of income. It's very easy. When I hear people said you can sell an idea and make money, all right? We remember the young man who created an idea with telecom communication, which is still battling for it. It's an idea. And then I know myself, I started with an idea. And then that idea became a business. But it's not easy, Nati. It's not easy. It's really tough. So I'm not going to lie and say, no, it's going to be easy. But first thing first, I always say to people, you need to look at yourself. I always ask this. How many of us, when we meet or when I go on the road, I see 10 cents or 50 cents. How many of us do we pick it up? We don't. We just pass it. Because we think that, 50 cents, what difference is it going to make? 1 rand, what difference does it going to make? They say, take care of the cents, the rents will take care of themselves. You must pick up that and have a piggy box, put it there if you don't need it by that time. There will be a time when you'll need it, some of us, when we go to the shop, they say, no, your change is 10 cents. You say, no, leave it. You see, now you need to look at your life. It's like I always say to people, it's like a bucket. You know, when you have a bucket of water, if I pour water in that bucket, but if that bucket has holes, there's no way I can retain that water. So even us, in terms of our financials, debts are like holes. You get the money, because of that, the money goes down, all right? So you're not making any progress. You need to start solving that problem. That's the first thing. If you ask me where people should start, the first thing that we should do is start dealing with debts. That's the most important. And remember, two kinds of debt, bad debt and good debt. They must start dealing with bad debts and start closing them one by one. And they can do that in many ways.
Yeah.
All right? In many ways.
I mean, Mr. Tshabalala, as we start speaking about that debt, I mean, a lot of, questions being raised because, there's so fewer economic sectors performing well in this country. One tends to go back into that trap of debt. I mean, TransUnion just recently publishing the findings of its Q3 2021 South Africa Industry Insight Report last month, showing the differences in credit behavior. How does one then start reducing the reliance of credit cards, especially when we have to look at household bills, that need financing, and at the same time begin to start a pattern of saving and perhaps even investing?
Nati, I always say to people say, how do you make money? I say, read. People say, read? Am I going to make money? In other words, you need to educate yourself. That's the first thing. And you may not take that one serious, but I can tell you serious. I solved my problem by reading, by educating myself with money. You need to start somewhere. Of course, when you start, you are not going to pay all of them, all right? Some you'll pay them, some won't pay them, but you'll make progress. But it doesn't end there. You need to engage your creditors and say, guys, I know I have a problem, engage them, go to them, and then have a plan with them and say, I'm going to pay you, and show that commitment, a little by little. Nati, I know I'm from there. I knew all the machinistas in Kempton Park. But at some point, after reading and starting to understand how money works, I decided that, I need to change. How many of us do what you call an income statement? It should not be difficult. It must be very easy. Make it easy. Income statement, it's simple, says the money that comes in and the money that goes out. Do we do that? All of us, we don't do that. And once you have that income statement, just check in terms of the money that goes out and the money that comes in. You'll realize that some of the money that goes out, it's not necessary for them to go out. I'll give you a practical example about me. I used to, because I've always liked to hustle, I used to move around. I won't be at home most of the time. So what I would do, I would eat takeaways most of the time. And you can imagine takeaway, I'll eat 50 rand alone in the morning. I'll eat another 50 rand lunchtime, another 50 rand at night. That's 150. With that 150 a day, if you times that 150 by 5, how much is it? If I take that money, then I buy a small grocery for all of us. At least I'm not only the one who is eating that money. So there is a bit of being selfishness. And again, start evaluating, start analyzing things that you do. There is any benefit in smoking. You know it as much as I know there's nothing to benefit.
Tshabalala, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but you bring some very important nuggets into this conversation that we are speaking about as people claw themselves out of debt. But thank you so much for your time. Obviously, another opportunity should definitely present itself, because I think this is a very important discussion. That was Saubrey Tshabalala, a debt counsellor and financial expert from Big R Solutions.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
All right, now let's take you to your sports news.